guys, I'm Amatra, and in grade 10, I was a panelist on CNN News 18, talk about schools reopening after COVID and should it be before or after the vaccine and stuff like that. So that's just me.
Very interesting and impressive, Amatra. This is Amatra Ivaturi. She's a sophomore at Flame University in Pune, India, where she's majoring in psychology. Today, we'll be hearing more from Amatra about the choices she's made, the lessons she has learned along the way, and her advice to young high school students as they prepare for this upcoming and exciting next phase of their life that we call university. So, welcome to University Unraveled. I'm your host, Arya Darod. I currently study at the most innovative university in the world, which is called Minerva University. Welcome, Amatra. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'll perhaps start with the most macro level decision you made. A lot of our classmates at school went and studied abroad in the US, the UK, and Canada. I would love to hear what were your reasons for choosing to stay back domestically and pursue your undergrad in India.
So honestly, I really want to go abroad for my undergrad as well. I applied to colleges majorly in UK and US, but uh, somehow I think I may have overshot my limits in terms of marks and the cutoff for the other colleges. So while I did get into a few good universities, I thought also I wasn't entirely ready to leave the country. So I thought it would be a good decision to stay back in India and pursue my bachelor's here and then go abroad for master's when I'm more independent.
I'm curious to hear finances aside, and let's say you had gotten into a really good university which was worth going abroad for. How do you think you could have prepared yourself differently to be, as you're saying, more independent and more ready to leave the country and study abroad? Like, what would that Amatra have looked like?
Honestly, when it comes to going abroad, in my opinion, there's no level of readiness. I feel like you just go and learn along the way. But if there were things that I would have taken into consideration personally, like keeping me in mind, I think the main reason is because I was really attached to my parents. So I would have had to gradually told myself and created that mental distance before I actually physically went away from them. I think that's one thing I would have done. But apart from that, when it comes to living abroad, especially when it comes to undergrad, I think there is no way of saying like this is the way to get ready. There's only you just jump into it. It's like swimming. You just jump into the deep end. There is no preparation whatsoever. You just have to go into it and let your fear dissipate on its own.
No, I totally agree. And I'm also very attached to my parents. One big decision I made was that I didn't, so my undergrad was in San Francisco with Minerva. I told them specifically, I don't want you to come to San Francisco and help me settle down because then I'm going to find it very hard to say goodbye. So I said goodbye to them at Hyderabad airport, took the flight alone, and ensured that, like, from that moment, I was alone. But definitely, like, one of the hardest moments of my life. And I think more than the actual moment, the months leading up to it are sort of a little bit fearful and anxious and dreadful. So I'm glad you're still in India. I'm glad you're still surrounded by a language that is comfortable and food that is comfortable. And I'm sure that once you come to masters, you'll feel more prepared and be ready to go abroad. Um, I'm curious why you chose to pursue psychology as your field of study. I know it's like lately an upcoming and pretty popular major. I see a lot of potential in the field, but how did you know personally that this is something that I am super interested in and this is something I want to study?
This is actually one of my favorite questions to answer because I love psychology. I have loved it since like a very long time. But one major reason is because growing up, I went through like a lot of disturbances, ups and downs in my own life. And I did go into my first therapy session was when I was 10 years old. So I personally never felt as connected with any therapist or any psychologist that I went to. Growing up, it was always really difficult. And by the time I got comfortable with someone, it was like we had to move or something like that used to come up. And I never really had a consistent relationship with a single therapist. And even when I did have a long one, it always felt like, okay, auntie is not like I used to call her auntie, but it's like in my head, I know she's not like, she's just an auntie. It's not like that. I know that she's a doctor and, she's studied these things, and she will inevitably end up telling my mom and dad what I tell her in the office, which is not, which is actually not what psychologists do. But unfortunately, with minors and specifically catering to the situation that I was facing, that is what they were supposed to do. So I never really felt that comfortable. So growing up, especially in grade 10, I was an IB, and we had something called the personal project, where you have to create a product based on any area of interest or even a niche thing that you're just interested in, create a product out of that. So I created a blogging website called How I Made It Out. The short form's Hemio. So that used to talk about my experiences growing up in a mixed family and the challenges I faced, how I dealt with them. And that really pushed me into psychology. Like that cemented my wish to become a psychologist. Along with that, I also wanted to be the child therapist that I never really connected to. I wanted to be the one that, kids like me never had growing up. So that is what made me go into psychology. And 11th and 12th, I took up psychology as a subject in IB. It was one of my higher level subjects. And that just, it was insane. I fell in love with the subject the first class onwards. And since then, I have, like, my priorities have changed a bit. It used to be just child therapist before. But now I'm also exploring other options like corporate, HR, or forensic psychology and things like that. So let's see where my master's takes me.
Wow, I love it when like there's a personal story behind the major choice. And I love it like how I love how you're sort of on a mission and there's a clear problem statement in mind, and that is sort of what motivated the choice to take the major. Um, for for a hypothetical high schooler like me who loves psychology but really doesn't enjoy biology, do you feel how much of a biology aspect do you feel is in an undergrad psychology program, and do you think I can go into psychology and go deep and really enjoy and master the field without any interest towards this field of biology, or do you feel like they are pretty intertwined?
So, when it comes to psychology, honestly, you can't really separate bio from it completely because there are some aspects that you understand about human behavior only after understanding the human anatomy and their physiology. But not to scare anyone listening and seeing this podcast, but there is a lot of maths also involved in psychology. And since I am doing a bachelor's of arts degree in psychology, it is drastically different from what a bachelor's of science degree of psychology would look like. So I'm not sure what the syllabus of BSc psychology is, but in BA psychology, there is not so much of bio. It's just a small aspect, like it's just the basics. You learn parts of the brain, what they correspond with, how they help in cognition, things like that. It's not really that deep. So if you are a person who's not so keen towards biology, you don't have to worry. It's just the basic levels that you're taught. And speaking as a science student myself, as I've studied science till grade 10, uh, having a background in science, especially while doing psychology, is pretty helpful because if you don't understand the basics of how the brain works and how the body works, then it does get a little difficult to predict the behavior itself. But if you get a grasp of how the things work, it makes your job a lot easier. It makes understanding psychology itself a lot easier. And while people think, oh, it's so boring, it's just, behavior and anyone can tell this about another person, there are some aspects I agree. They're very streamlined, they're very basic. Anyone can predict that. But as you go deeper into other fields that are not so acknowledged, for example, environmental psychology, or there's architecture in like related psychology as well, which people don't realize is important, but it exists. So those are other areas that you might find interesting. It's not always counseling, it's not always therapy, it's not always, oh my God, depression, oh my God, patience, oh my God, schizophrenia. It's not always like that. So yeah, I will say that science bio is an important aspect. It cannot be taken away, but it's not so heavy that you have to worry about it.
I love the last point. I want to double down on that. I think doing a psychology major does not equal going and becoming a therapist or a counselor later on at a school or at another institution. I'd love for you to just briefly, from your current knowledge, what are some other interesting career paths which maybe people haven't thought about as much, which a psychology major could lead to?
You have speech therapists as well who work in psychology. You have hearing specialists who help deaf children, people who have speech impairments, hearing defects. Then you have, like I said, environmental psychology. Now, what I mean by environmental psychology is, for example, you want to conserve a certain area of a city that's being overtaken by, buildings and constructions and whatnot. The environmental psychologists help in figuring out how to appeal to the human side to save that part, to ensure that that part of nature is not destroyed. Then when it comes to architectural psychology, it's how to design buildings so that the employees or the workers have a better mental space, and so they won't be too burdened by the work that they're in. A lot of buildings, corporate buildings especially nowadays, you see they have green spaces or green areas within the building itself. That includes, a lounge area, no digital stuff whatsoever, and even down to basic details in the color scheme of the building, the colors of the walls. Should the paneling above, should the roof show, what color should the roof be, window size, desk arrangement, everything like that. While people don't realize it, there is a psychologist behind that. So these are just three things I can think of at the top of my head. There are way more things that you can do learning psychology. And it's not always that you have to pursue psychology after undergrad. For example, one of my seniors is doing an MBA degree right now, despite doing psychology as her bachelor's. So you can always go to the corporate world. Having psychology and psychology business together is a very sought after combination, I would say. So that's also one thing you can do. And there's just a lot of things to do. Even in therapy itself, you have equestrian therapy that's coming up. You have dog therapy, you have music therapy, art therapy, dance therapy. It's in the range of things you can do in this field is immense.
Yeah, I mean, it's super vast. I did business and psychology and IB. I think it's a great combination. I could see a lot of intersections. And I mean, one of the big intersections is sort of consumer marketing and understanding consumer behavior. Something as simple as the colors of an advertisement plays such a big role in your emotional reaction to it. And I think also now with our generation being so aware of and always saying, oh, this disturbed my mental health, and oh, this is my mental health is not in a good position right now. We're a lot more aware of problems like anxiety and depression and loneliness. And so I think the need for psychological services and people like yourself, not only for humans, also for animals, they also have emotions, is like immense and it's growing. I'd love to come to the institution itself, to Flame University. What drew you specifically to Flame as an institution to study psychology?
Honestly, the first thing that drew me to Flame was Google. I Googled top 5 universities in India for psychology, and one of the options that came up was Flame University. And the advantage of Flame University is that, according to my dean, it's one of the only universities in India that offers a major and minor combination that's mostly seen abroad, but not so much so in India. So that's something that drew me to Flame. Also, offered me, I was conflicted between going after a BSc degree or a BA degree in psychology. But looking at the courses that Flame had to offer, looking at the liberal arts structure of it, I really fell in love with how Flame functions. And it also uses interdisciplinary learning, something that I was used to in IB. So it kind of related to how my learning system was, my learning styles. So I thought I'd fit in pretty easily. And especially because it's located in Pune. As a kid, I lived in Pune for 5 years. So the city I was really familiar with. I was familiar with especially the local language. We speak Marathi over there. I'm familiar with that language as well. I had friends from my old school who are going to Flame. And also, there is a financial aspect to it. I was offered a full tuition scholarship in Flame University. So that kind of finalized my decision to go there.
Glad to know that you're sort of coming home and coming back to people you know and a language you know. I'm sure that comfort factor is good, especially when a lot of other things might be new in terms of social life or clubs or academic stresses at Flame. It's good to have something be familiar and comfortable. Um, we've been talking about IB a lot, and I'm sure IB over grade 9 to 12 took up 70 to 80% of all of our time. But I'm sure that what got you into Flame was IB plus other activities you engaged in. I'd love to talk about a few of the extracurriculars you engaged in from grade 9 to 12, um, which were somehow related to pursuing psychology. And how did you sort of make yourself stand out as a differentiated and attractive candidate for Flame for a psychology degree?
I guess one thing that stood out would be the research paper that I published in grade 10. So I worked with an NGO based in Mumbai, and we wrote a research paper about how social media affects the body image of adolescents in India. And it was supposed to be only for India, but we sent out a Google form to get back, replies for our primary data collection, and we got responses from over 15 countries, if I'm not wrong. So it was a really fun experience to do. I worked with three other girls. Four of us authored the research paper together, and it was published on the NGO's website as well. And I'm in talks with my own professors in my university to publish it on another platform, which it's still in discussions, but let's see what happens. So I think that's one thing that stood out. Apart from that, I have conducted workshops with children from other NGOs as well about the same issue, about body image. And I've worked with a lot of kids. Was, um, how do I put this? I used to work with an NGO called Read a Story. So I've taught kids how to speak English. I've conducted English speaking workshops for soft skills. And other than that, majorly, I did do a few courses here and there, but I think my major standing out point would be that. Adding to that was also my website, Hemio, that I talked about before. And apart from that, I think that's pretty much it. That's what I did.
No, I mean that's not pretty much it. That's impressive. That's a good variety of things, and I see all of them having a good tie back to psychology and also, in some sense, community service and community activism, which I'm sure is well appreciated at any university. Shows leadership as well, of course. Um, I'd love to. This might be slightly difficult for you to share, but I'm sure it'll be super valuable for listeners. Is I would love to talk about one or maybe even a few big mistakes you made throughout this whole university application process and cycle. We all have our own mistakes which we made. No one sort of did a perfect journey. But what was one or a couple of mistakes you made which you really want to advise your juniors not to repeat?
I would highlight on two major things that I feel every student should keep in mind. Number one is your statement of purpose, which is your SOPs when you're applying. The mistake that I made was using the same SOP or the same speech that I had prepared for all my universities that I applied for. That's the biggest mistake you make. While it is okay to have a template, I'm not going to say you don't have a template, but it is very helpful if you tweak and modify your SOPs based on the university you're applying to. For example, when I was applying to Flame University, the thing that appealed to me the most about them was their interdisciplinary style of learning. So I included that in my SOP. I talked about how I'm used to that and how I felt like connected with their style of teaching as well. And that's why I was more inclined to come to Flame University. When I applied to some of my colleges in UK, I spent a good 3-4 days of research on each university, and then this was after I applied to a few universities. I'll bet it was not at the start, but the universities that I did modify my SOP with were the ones that I got accepted into. The ones that I just sent out my SOP were either I got waitlisted and then rejected, or I got rejected upfront. So that's the one mistake I would say be careful of. Second, always apply for your safe options. Always keep backup options available. Yes, if you, for example, if you have 98% of marks in your boards, but the cutoff is also 98. It is risky to apply to colleges with the cutoff of the marks that you got, because the cutoff is, in other words, the baseline. That's the minimum they expect from you. So applying to colleges like that might be difficult for you. So if you've got 98, I would suggest apply to colleges that have 96 or 96.5, 97, like that. You have a better chance over there. The mistake that I made was applying to colleges that my plated grades cut at like 30. I got 38, and that is where they also ended. That's like the minimum of my colleges that I applied to. That's one mistake I made.
No, that's good. That's good advice which we as students can give, having gone through such a process. And I think, hope for the best, prepare for the worst is a good way to go about things. I'm curious to hear from you. I also did research. I also had a bunch of areas where I researched when for a university when preparing my SOP. Apart from the university website, are there any other avenues or places where you can research and learn more about a university to prepare like that more nuanced or narrowed SOP?
While this is unconventional, I would say uh, go to blogging websites, especially Quora in India, for example. A lot of my information that I got from Flame University was from Quora, from previous students who posted there. There are a lot of questions. What kind of food? What's the fee structure like? Is it a good place to go? Are there drugs? Which is a very common question that parents ask. Uh, Go to blogging websites. They are very, very helpful. And apart from that, try looking up and seeing if there are any news articles that are related to a university. If there's any research paper been published, if there's any acclaimed faculty over there that you don't find anywhere else, things like that. They do help a lot. And if you want to know more about a university for your personal knowledge, Instagram is not such a bad option. Both the official college college Instagram page and meme pages. I'm not joking when I say meme pages give you a lot of information about the inside workings of a college. So for personal gain and for curiosity, I would say go to Instagram. But while framing SOPs, stick to the online websites and blogging websites.
Yeah, I mean, and this is why I get students on the podcast is you can give these kind of insider tips, which maybe aren't super conventional. A college counselor will never give you, but still, I mean, on a university's website, I'm sure they're going to be putting their best face. And I'm sure it's good to also be aware of certain limitations or the realities of attending a particular university. And each university has some or the other drawback or limitation, which is just even a Harvard, even a Stanford, which I think is very well worth to being aware of. Brings me to my next question. What has been one of the most enjoyable parts of attending Flame so far? And also, maybe a tougher question, what has been one potential limitation or drawback of attending Flame so far?
So, starting off with the good news is that going to Flame, there is not a day that goes by where there's nothing happening on campus. Every single day, especially if you're a first year student, there is always something to look forward to. We have close to 60 clubs on campus, both sports and cultural clubs as well, with more coming up. Like every year, there is at least one student I know who pitches forward an idea of a new club, and it really goes well. Honestly, there are so many events organized by all the clubs. And apart from that, Flame itself hosts a lot of conferences, a lot of fests and inter-college competitions that happen. People from other colleges come to campus like for 2, 3 days, and they'll be like handing out flyers. Please come to our college, participate in this competition, do this, do that. And that's honestly one of the best things about Flame is that it's not only focused on academics, it also helps in the holistic development of an individual. And the best part about Flame is that unlike our school events, every event that happens on the Flame campus, apart from the conferences and anything that the Flame administration is in charge of, every other competition, cultural fest that happens is handled completely by students. The only involvement of a professor is when we go to her and then we ask budget and then they approve the budget and give it to us. That's it. Everything else from finances to PR, marketing, sponsorship, outreach, decor, everything is done by students ourselves. So I feel that helps a lot in your time management skills, organizational skills, leadership skills, basic conversational skills, believe it or not. So that's, I feel, as one of the best things about Flame. And coming to some of the drawbacks, there are two drawbacks that might affect students. One is that Flame is a fully residential college, meaning that there are no day scholars. You have to stay on campus in hostel at all times. You get to go home, of course. You can go to the city whenever you want and you can go home for holidays. But we do have a curfew and you have to be back in campus by that time. So for students who are not used to staying away from their parents or who've grown up being day scholar students, it might be difficult getting used to hostel life because staying away from parents is not as easy as it's said. People might run away to college thinking, oh, I'll get some peace, but you do end up missing them in some form or the other. So I feel that's one thing that might be a drawback.
Over the whole first year at Flame, what's one super memorable event or fest or conference which you attended at on campus, which you would like to just share with listeners?
Flame Kurukshetra. You will see this on the Instagram page, on the website, on every other meme page, blogging website, whatever you see, Flame Kurukshetra will be there everywhere. So Flame Kurukshetra is an sports and cultural inter-college fest that happens. We have gotten colleges from out of state as well. People have come from, I think, Bangalore, if I'm not wrong, to compete in one of our events. And it's a 3-day event that happens, but those 3 days are filled to the brim. They're like chock full of events. You have like a minimum of 4 competitions happening on the same day at least. When it comes to sports, we have it almost till the matches go on till like 10 p.m. at night and they start at around 10 a.m. sometimes. Cricket matches, especially, they don't go on for very long, but they do start earlier as they take longer to finish. So that is one of our biggest events. And me personally, I participated as a volunteer, a part of the hospitality team. So my job was mainly escorting judges and referees from the gate to the ground and back, and making sure they have everything with them. So we have different committees also in Kurukshetra. We have security, decor, sponsorship, IT, hospitality, PR, and there's a lot of committees that are there. There's those 3 days. There's no sleep, hardly any food, running around. Your feet are gonna die, but it's the best experience you could have, in my opinion, as a first year student. So one thing that I learned from Kurukshetra: be patient, yeah, and you will eventually things will be fine.
Yeah, it's a good life motto at large as well. Be patient and eventually things will be fine. I love how your answers are segueing into the next question without, I don't think you're trying to do this, but leading off of be patient, everything will be fine. I know your first year and everyone's first year at university has some significant ups and downs. And I'd love to focus on the downs because everyone is happy during the ups. Those are the moments of growth and learning, which we talk about on LinkedIn and at interviews. But the downs are not as talked about. I would love to talk about whatever you're comfortable sharing, which were downs at Flame, times where you had negative emotions, sadness, anger, fear, times where you felt homesick or lonely, and how you sort of pulled yourself out because also your parents are on video call, which is very different than them being like there physically as sort of maybe a shoulder to cry on or a person to hug. But how you sort of handled them yourself and got yourself out of that and tried to become more positive and sort of really take care of your mental health.
So one of the things that's very common in Flame is obviously, like you mentioned, homesickness. A lot of students are not used to staying away from their parents. And to that, this usually goes up for around the first 3 months is when people suffer the most with homesickness. After that, we kind of get into a routine, we get used to everything on campus, and we have a lot of events to distract us as well. We have a lot of academics to distract us. But honestly, there is no easy way of going about it. The first 3 months at least are the roughest. You are mostly on your own because you don't have a friend group yet, or unless you're one of the lucky people who have come with your friends to college. And that's not the case for a lot of our students. They are still trying to figure out friend groups, they're trying to figure out who they fit in with, who they don't fit in with. And unfortunately, because We all are homesick, we're all very emotional, we're coming to college for the first time. There are plenty of chances where you might fall in with the wrong crowd. But with homesickness, Flame does have a really good counseling center for students. We have 5 counselors. We have overnight counselors as well who come in like every alternate day on campus. We do have a really good counseling service. I went to the counselors myself because, I mean, I was going through a breakup, but okay, I was still feeling bad. So I went to the counselor about it. And, we talked and we started having regular sessions. I opened up about other issues also that I faced, both personal and academic, and she helped me a lot with that. So I would say if you have any troubles in Flame, please go to the counselors. They're really good. They maintain anonymity. There's nothing disclosed, especially because you're an adult when you go to college. Most of the students are 18. Average is 18. So please go to the counselors because they're really good. And apart from that, the other downs that you might face is academic stress because a lot of CBSE students might not be, I mean, in my experience, my friends who are from CBSE have told me that, it's difficult to write a lot of words. It's difficult to write essays and research papers and things like that, especially because we have a foundation course in Flame called academic writing, where the smallest word limit given to us was 1,000 words. So I would say, writing gets is not a practice for a lot of students. That is one thing that people might find difficult. And the type of learning that we have, there's different classes that you have. It's not the average classes you might find in college. We have different things. You have a class that's just focused on deities and iconography in temples and how to differentiate one goddess from another just based on the carvings. You have classes that and you have basic maths, you have basic physics as well. So it is a very different environment that not a lot of people might be used to. So I would say that adjusting and settling down is the most difficult thing to do. Honestly, just believe in yourself, go to a counselor if you need, and eventually you will find your friend group. The friend group that you find in the first 2 months is not going to be the one you stick with. If it is the one you stick with and you go ahead with it, congratulations. That's rare. But because it's rare, don't don't depend on it.
Well, that's good advice. I was just thinking back, and yes, definitely the people who I hung out with in the first month, 2 months, I think I'm hanging out with different people currently. Some people have continued, some people have gone to different friends group. There's a lot of dynamics, and everyone is coming in. A lot of people don't know anyone or know very few people on campus. There is some level of desperation because friends also have to sort of become family at that point of time. Next question is a big apprehension to students who do IB in high school, who do A levels in high school, who do whatever curriculum is in high school is, and I've been asked this a lot as to just very innocently, how are your university classes different from high school classes? So this is a broad question. Feel free to tackle it from as many angles as you want to. We can talk duration, we can talk structure, level of interaction, level of difficulty, level of preparation you go into each class with is something I can talk a lot about. But yeah, very broadly, how are flame classes different from the IB classes you took in high school?
So honestly, flame classes are very different from the average Indian college as well. So the average Indian college, if I'm talking about, especially if it's engineering or economics or something like that, it follows a pretty standard, school life. It starts at 8 o'clock, ends at 2, 3 o'clock, and then you go home after that. But in Flame, the classes depend entirely on the courses you select. So me personally, I remember in term 4, my last term of college of my first year, I had 4 classes on Thursday and not a single class on Wednesday. My Wednesday was empty. Like I just had to like go for meals and stuff. I had nothing else to do. So the college courses depend, the timetable depends entirely on what you choose. And you only have to go to the classes that, you've picked. It's not like you have a set time, you have to be in college from time to this time. It's nothing like that. But in Flame, there are a few specified number of courses that's mandatory for every first year student. They're called your core courses. So you have things like academic writing that I mentioned before. You have public speaking, critical reasoning, ethics, digital literacy, EDS. These are some of the main courses that you have to attend as a first year student. And in terms of attendance, we have a 75% attendance policy. You cannot go be less than that. If you go less than 75%, then you will have to repeat your course. And if you are a regular offender, then there will be disciplinary action taken, and you might have to repeat your first year altogether. So there are things like that. The flame is pretty strict on attendance. And in terms of how the course, like the duration of each class, each class is like 2 hours long with a break after 1 hour. It's technically 1 hour 55 minutes, but it's just, let's keep it at 2 hours for easy, like, approach. So we have 2 hours each class. We have a minimum, there's no minimum number of classes per day. Like I said, I had my Wednesdays completely free. But there is like a limit. At 7, by 7, all your academic classes end. That mostly doesn't go beyond that unless you're staying back with a professor or you're working on a specific project with them. And in terms of preparation of the courses, most of the courses in first year are beginner courses, meaning you don't have to have any knowledge whatsoever to take that course. You can take any course you want. Having said that, there are a few courses that are mandatory for your major. For example, we have for any BBA courses that happen, we do have a subject called OPSM, Operations Research, that you have to take. So these are just prerequisites because it makes it easier for you to do your majors if you know you're good at the subject. It's also to give the students a check as to how to test yourself how good you are. If you can handle this, and you can handle your major, that sort of thing. And the professors especially are very, very helpful. They're really helpful. You can text them whenever, I mean, within limits. But you can send them mails. Most of them will tell you like, okay, this is my office. I'm free from this time to this time. You can schedule appointments with them, and they're very, very, very helpful. There are, of course, some professors who are more strict than others, who you do have to talk to a bit to get them to notice you and then get them to grade you well. Because Flame University and many colleges have a relative grading system. It's not objective like what we have in school. It is relative to your class. So if you get a 8 on 10 and the rest of your class gets, a 5 on 10 or something, you will be in the top 1 percentile of your class. That's even though the percentage might not correlate to your grade, it is relative to the rest of your people. So unfortunately, you do have to make sure that your professor knows your name in order for them to be able to grade you well. That being said, they're not biased. None of the professors that I know are biased. There might be allegations against a few, but in my experience, I've never been biased against in any of my courses. So that is one thing to keep in mind. The other thing good about Flame is that, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of courses you can choose from, to the point where people that I have known, they came to Flame saying, okay, I will study economics. I will do only this. And then by the end of third term, they're like, you know what, I'm going to do film and television. I'm not interested in economics anymore. So that's the beauty of the liberal arts education system, is that the first year is mainly for exploration. You get to choose whatever subjects you want while fulfilling a certain criteria. Then you can, by choosing any of the courses you want, you get to know yourself better, you get to know your interests better, and you get to know which faculty is better for you, or which you might be more interested in. That's one very big advantage of the courses in Flame as well. That's the academic structure.
After your first year, as far as I know, you're still intending on majoring in psychology, but has any interest come up in terms of a potential minor?
So as a minor, I came with the idea that I would do sociology as my minor in Flame. But after taking the classes and things like that, I realized sociology, philosophy is not my cup of tea. And instead, I was really interested in human resource management. That's one of the courses that I took. So now my major is psychology with a minor in HR. This also reason I chose is because there is a certain flexibility that I get. It's in terms of work opportunities later on in the future if I do want to work after my bachelor's. But that's just my personal opinion. That's one thing. My friend, he in fact came to Flame thinking he'd do psychology, and now he's doing finance with a major in economics. So big shift for a lot of people.
I mean, I've heard of more extreme shifts. I've heard of computer science to philosophy and like literature to physics. It's just crazy that sometimes you just think you love something so much even before you've actually studied or pursued it. And then these foundational courses, I think I personally am a big advocate for them, despite how much of a clarity you think you have about what you're going to study, because you never know when your mind might switch. And I'm sure that as a psychology major, even taking courses outside of psychology, there's some of the other skill or mindset you'll gain, which is valuable to you, if not in psychology, in just how you live your life. Is just how I feel.
Yeah,
So
that's really true.
this has been a lovely conversation so far. We've touched on before university, we've touched on application tips, we've touched on your first year at Flame, we've touched on specific resources, which I'm sure are helpful to anyone who's considering Flame seriously as an option. I just want to quickly touch upon, just so viewers get an idea as to which direction you're heading with a major in psychology and a minor in HRM. What do you see yourself currently doing after graduation?
Currently, after my bachelor's, I do intend on pursuing my master's degree, and only then I would want to, start working in the field. Because a tip that I've gotten from my professors is that finish education, because once you get into the flow, it's like good to finish off everything. Taking a break might hamper any, flow that you've already built during your bachelor's. So that's what I'm planning on doing. And let's see. Right now, I'm focused on being a child therapist, but I do have half a mind wavering towards forensic clinical psychology as well. So, sorry, criminal psychology as well. So let's see.
Interesting. And I'm curious to see whether the answer says the same when I call you up 2, 3 years from now. I don't know. I'm not making any statements. But I know that for a lot of people this also changes or even at least becomes more nuanced. But I'm glad that you have some idea right now, because at least currently you have a direction to work towards. It's great to hear that you have some sort of idea as to where you're going and that you're pursuing a master's. I know it's still super early. I know you've just finished up first year and starting second year, but do you know about, have your professors guided you in terms of specific areas or specific aspects you should be focusing on at Flame to make yourself a good applicant for a good psychology master's program? This might be way ahead, but I'm curious whether they've instructed you to maybe like do more research or keep your grades up, or like any specific advice for someone who knows from like first year onwards that they're going to pursue a master's after.
There are three things that I've been told to keep in mind. First is obviously your academics. Make sure that your GPA is it's like extremely high. That's just to ensure that you get into a good university. And me being a scholarship student, I am obligated to maintain a CGPA of 7.0 and above. So right now I'm breezing through it, but let's see if that's the same next year. The second thing that I've been told is yes, do research. There are a lot of students who keep publishing research papers with the help of faculty, or it doesn't have to be in the field that you're doing, but it is helpful to have a few publications under your name, because that just adds to your work ethics, and that just adds to your capabilities of doing research and being able to dive into something deep. The third thing is the semester abroad program that we have in Flame. So it is essentially where you spend 4 months, that is one semester, in any college that Flame has affiliations with. For example, in US, I'm aware of UC Davis and Yale that I'm planning on going to. That is UC Davis is what I think I might want to go to. So that is one very good advantage to have in your resume, is that if you can show that, yes, I have gone on a semester abroad program, because the minimum requirement for the SEM abroad program is an 8.0 GPA. And while they say 8.0 is enough, a lot of the students I know have maintained a 9.0 GPA and above to get selected to that program. So that is one thing that I would want to do. And these are the three things that my professors have told me.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm sure there are similarities in the past between, let's say, someone like you and me, where even if I'm going to pursue my master's, it's going to be after working for a few years. So I'm sure there are both similarities in how we're approaching education in university and undergrad, but I'm sure there are also significant differences. Like, let's say in my case, research is maybe slightly less important than actual internship and work experience. So I think it's definitely good to have some sort of idea. It can change over the years, but even after finishing first year, I think it's good to have some idea of whether general path for you is further education or getting into the world of work. Um, but this has been a great conversation. I appreciate it. I'm not done yet. We'll end with something slightly more exciting and fast paced, which is our fast fire round of questions. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. Throw them at you like bullets, and you can feel free to answer it just one phrase or one sentence. And let's see where this takes us. What do you think will be the most valuable skill in the workplace of 2030, regardless of profession?
Managing AI.
Managing AI? Love it. Any quote that has stuck with you over the years?
Uh, I mean, this is very pessimistic, but we get what we deserve. I think that's what it is. But apart from that, there is also just, this is from a book. I don't know if people have read it, but it's basically Finding Nemo. It says, just keep swimming. That's
Mm.
something that I really, really believe in.
What does just keep swimming mean to you, or like in the context of your life?
To me, it's like to never let any obstacle stop me, because in my personal life, I've dealt with a lot of shitty things, a lot of things that people have looked at and they've heard from me and been like, how did you get past that? And how are you still here smiling today? So that's the kind of this belief that I have, is that nothing can really stop you if you don't want it to. You only let things get to you if you let them. So just go ahead. Don't let anything stop you. Keep going ahead with the belief that you can get it past.
Love it. Love it. Your favorite non-fiction or fiction book? I know you read a ton of both.
Uh, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Lovely, lovely. Great book. Um, One course or subject that you think everyone should learn during their freshman year at university?
Math.
Math.
Very controversial opinion, but maths.
Lovely. And any specific object you've missed a lot from your home? I know there's a guitar sitting behind you. That could be it. I don't know if it is. But any specific object you've missed a lot while at Flame, which you left back home?
Uh, Honestly, I did take a lot of things home, but the one thing I missed would probably be my waveboard, which is not that significant. It's under my desk right now. But I missed it because I used to keep, waveboarding around my society. But the campus roads are not as suitable for a waveboard. So I just kind of miss waveboarding around. That's it.
How do you get
I,
around Flame? Sorry.
we walk actually a lot. No, in terms of the guitar, I do take it back to campus.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a lot of jam nights that take place and things like that. But in terms of transport on campus, we just walk a lot, like a minimum of 5K every day, I'm guessing, or maybe even more, I'm not sure. But apart from that, we do have a shuttle system as well, both inside and outside campus. So it goes to each block or the major points on campus where people tend to get down a lot. So it's just that. We do have cycles as well within campus. So that's a plus.
I mean, it's good exercise, especially I'm sure there are days where there's no time to go to the gym. And I'm sure that 5K of walking is like, you at least feel like you've done something, then sit on your
Yeah.
um, lastly, if you had to leave one piece of advice for young people younger than you, for high schoolers in specific, could be about university ideally, or it could also be about life at large, what would that be?
This specific thing that I'm going to say applies to both college and life as well. Choose your friends wisely. Please choose them wisely, because people don't joke around when they say you are the average of the five people around you. This is no joke. It is actually in truth. So please be careful while choosing your friends.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, all great things, all great conversations must come to an end. I've loved this conversation. Um,
Me too.
um, Thank you. Amatra, what's the best way for listeners to connect with you or follow up with questions about flame or psychology or anything in general?
I'm very much online and active on LinkedIn. So please do reach out to me over there if you have any questions. I have the name Amatra on LinkedIn. Or if you want little, if that's not something that you use, then I'm available on Instagram as well with the same handle, Amatra Natikar. So that's how you can reach out to me.
Lovely. And I hope people reach out to you after the podcast. That would be awesome.
Do any questions? I'm there. I'm the one.
Thank you so much for your wise words on University Unraveled. Real pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that was the episode. To all the young listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you feel more energized, inspired, and curious for the exciting university journey that lies ahead. Stay tuned. Many more wonderful episodes to be released on Uni Unveiled across a diversity of majors, countries, institutions, and speaker profiles. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Uni Unveiled. This podcast is just a small part of a much larger initiative undertaken by my family called Serene Strokes to spread positive sparks of growth, transformation, and joy among all our audience. Check out our official website www.serenestrokes.com. In the description and comments, please feel free to share other topics and questions which you would love to hear about from our different speakers on this podcast. Until then, take care and remember that this big word, university, may not be as scary or as intimidating as you think it is. Thank you for listening to Uni Unveiled.